Hey guys, tonight we're descending into a tapestry of sacral spectacle, from the torchlit halls of the Vatican where gilded frescoes hid whispered alliances, to the winding alleys of Rome where Borgia banners fluttered like dark omens, revealing how a family cloaked in holiness became architects of blasphemy. You'll taste the copper tang of spilled wine on velvet floors as cardinals traded secrets beneath fleur-de-lis tapestries. Feel the chill of marble pillars echoing with silent prayers twisted into vows of ambition, and hear the distant clang of armor as Cesare marched beneath shadows cast by papal keys. Before we dive in, if you're enjoying these tales of power, betrayal, and forbidden rites, smash that like button and subscribe. Your devotion fuels our journey through history's hidden corridors. Now, dim the lights, pull your cloak tight, and let the echo of Borgia whispers guide you into a night where piety and perfidy collide. What if the cradle of God's envoy rocked with corruption from day one? Rodrigo Borgia was born on the 1st of January, 1431 in Zativa, Spain, under a tapestry of incense and intrigue. His father, Cardinal Alonso de Borgia, held the vestments of power, while his mother, Maria Enriquez, whispered ambition in royal ears. As a child, he felt the metallic tang of gold coins more keenly than the murmurs of the Mass. This upbringing set in motion a destiny entwined with both piety and perfidy. By age 26, in 1457, he donned the mitre of the Bishop of Valencia, anointed with marble dust and family influence. Meanwhile, his clerical soundings echoed through vaulted corridors, a hymn of ambition. He amassed benefices across Italy like a moth drawn to the flame of ecclesiastical revenues. You could almost taste the charged air when he shook a cardinal's hand. The heady scent of fresh parchment mingled with the acrid proof of sold offices. Simony became his secret handshake in gilded salons and candlelit chambers. This led to rumors that whispered through Rome like a persistent breeze. Servants in crimson cassocks exchanged furtive glances at his passing silhouette. But young ambition demanded more than mere hem, and soon the shadows beckoned. He cultivated alliances with noble houses as carefully as a gardener tends poisoned roses. The velvet drapes of papal courts shivered at his calculated approach. His eyes glinted with the chill of a winter's dawn on marble floors. This caused rivals to suspect that even prayers could be brokered. Each benefice he acquired added another link to his chain of influence. Elsewhere, the hum of negotiation buzzed beneath frescoed ceilings. He spoke in soft tones, each word steeped in honey and peril. This earned him a reputation for both charm and command. The polished corridors of Valencia Cathedral bore witness to his ascent. Guards in steel breastplates watched him as if he were a relic come to life. But the promise of Rome's golden chair still lay just beyond his grasp. The vibrant reds of his vestments contrasted starkly with the pallor of expectant courtiers. As a result, he learned that power could taste like both sacrament and poison. Candles flickered over his study desk, where ledgers of income and influence lay open. His mind worked like a finely tuned clock, each tick marking a scheme. All the while, the faithful knelt unaware of the transactions beneath the altar. This set in motion a network of favors that spanned the Italian peninsula. Silk banners bearing the Borgia bull fluttered in markets where traders bowed. The bull, charging forward, symbolized both faith and feral hunger. But even as he smiled for painted portraits, the brush hid venal intentions. The scent of wet plaster and fresh pigments in nearby workshops seemed to mock his virtue. Each stroke by local artists painted him as a humble shepherd, though wolves lurked behind his countenance. The cold marble benches of Zativa Cathedral held echoes of his first sermon. His voice, smooth as Venetian olive oil, betrayed no hint of duplicity. However, Childhood lessons in manipulation would soon outshine any sermon. The soft murmur of confessionals became a stage for his subtle lessons in leverage. This created a legacy where devotion and deceit walked hand in hand. The Spanish sun that warmed his cradle cast long shadows over his soul. In those early years, the balance between faith and fraud began to tip. Rumors wove through his youth, suggesting even sacrilege could be sanctioned. Yet few realized that the boy destined for the mitre would soon kneel only to power. And as dawn broke over the monastery walls, a new chapter of blasphemy awaited. Could bribery and betrayal become the currency of salvation? By 1468, Cardinal Rodrigo had mastered the alchemy of influence in Milan's glittering courts. He brokered an alliance with the Sforza family, trading church lands for Sforza banners and soldiers. Consequently, gold poured into Borgia coffers like wine at a festive banquet. The velvet air shimmered with whispered negotiations and faint pipe smoke. His purple robes billowed through candlelit halls, a living monument to clerical ambition. In 1471, he journeyed as papal legate to Milan and Naples, flanked by relics and armed guards. His words, smooth as Verona's red marble, sealed peace through flattery and extortion. This led to temporary calm between warring duchies, though at the price of Rome's integrity. He hosted feasts in the Vatican, tables groaning under roasted boar and gilded goblets. The scent of rosemary and roasting meat mingled with incense, masking the metallic glint of bribery. Ambassadors leaned close, voices low like exhaled prayer. Each favor dispensed became another thread in his tapestry of power. Coins exchanged hands beneath vaulted arches, sounding like faint church bells. As cardinal, he distributed bishoprics as if dealing tiles in a high-stakes game. Simony became an art form, painted in strokes of purple and gold. The polished floors echoed his laughter, light and cold as winter sunlight on marble. At the same time, rival cardinals felt the tremor of his influence spreading. Portraits of Rodrigo appeared in Florence's chapels, halos gilded around his brow. The church's pulse quickened with awe and suspicion in equal measure. He whispered promises of protection and papal favor like a wind-stirring incense. This cultivated loyalty among lesser prelates who craved advancement. Scribes copied letters by torchlight, each sealed with a crimson signet ring bearing the bull. Even the Roman poor murmured prayers for his name amidst tattered shawls. However, every blessing bore the taint of calculated design. The cacophony of trumpets in Mantua heralded another Borgia triumph. Yet beneath the fanfare, secret ledgers charted tributes and tribulations. The taste of sweet figs at banquets was tinged with the acrid undercurrent of deceit. As a result, Rome began to mutter of corruption woven into the very fabric of sainthood. Still, Rodrigo wore his reputation, like armor gleaming under chapel skylights. The flicker of torchlight on his mitre gave him the air of a sainted general. Courtiers in brocade whispered that even prayers could be purchased. His influence reached into the cloisters where novices knelt on cold stones. The scent of candle smoke and sweat swirled in narrow passageways. Ambition's flame burned brighter than the oil lamps that lined his path. He moved through the Vatican like a chess master, each gesture a strategic sacrifice. Political rivals felt the chill of his gaze in frescoed corridors. They wondered if even confession could cleanse such calculated ambition. Simultaneously, diplomatic envoys carried his edicts across the Alps and Adriatic. His reputation for both magnanimity and menace spread like wildfire across Europe. The soft murmur of velvet as he passed through galleries became a dirge of dread. Meanwhile, rivals found their goblets tainted, and power proved a deadly prize. Could a poisoned chalice seal a prelate's rise? In 1483, whispers swirled of Cardinal Juan de Lana collapsing after a sumptuous banquet in the Borgia apartments. Rodrigo's enemies spoke of aconite hidden in wine, its metallic tang staining marble floors. This created an atmosphere of dread that clung to the corridors like damp moss. The candlelight trembled over goblets before they shattered in crimson arcs. Thus, few dared meet his gaze during official audiences. By 1491, Papal Secretary Francesco Orsini lay dead, his gift of exotic wine recalled in hushed gossip. The vineyard scent of that fateful vintage lingered in memory like a final confession. Each murmur of poison rippled through Rome's spiritual heart. Servants polished chalices with trembling fingers, wary of hidden stigmata of death. Rodrigo's laughter echoed off frescoed walls, light and chilling as a winter dawn. Meanwhile, rumour and reality wove themselves into a fearful harmony. His critics spoke of simony, but feared the sharper taste of vendetta. Silk tapestries in the apostolic palace fluttered with more than luxury. They whispered secrets. The metallic clink of glass on stone became a sombre refrain. He seated himself beneath vaulted frescoes depicting saints, their painted eyes seeming to judge. Yet his own gaze remained unreadable, as cold as a tomb's marble. This mastery of terror secured his path toward Rome's highest office. He signed decrees by lamplight, each stroke a step closer to the tiara. The incense haze of midnight mass concealed darker rites at play. Courtiers in crimson doublets offered devotion with trembling hands. This caused rival cardinals to exchange wary glances over missals. His name became synonymous with both sanctity and slaughter. The brazen scent of lilies in the chapel contrasted with the acrid fear beneath. Candle wicks hissed in battered holders as secrets passed from lips to lips. At the same time, the keys of St. Peter appeared as vulnerable as any mortal lock. Each rumour of murder sharpened his aura like a blade in sunlight. The scent of wet stone after rain in Vatican gardens carried an undercurrent of menace. Frescoes of martyrdom framed his silhouette in shifting shadows. His correspondence, written in steady script, never betrayed his darker designs. Yet those who read between the lines felt the chill of betrayal. Poison, they said, was his silent confessor. The polished oak of council benches bore witness to silent accusations. As a result, factions within Rome solidified around fear of his ascendancy. He moved through corridors like a ghost cloaked in silk. Lanterns cast fractured light over his steps, creating half-seen phantoms. Each act of alleged murder served as both warning and promise. The distant toll of bells sounded like a funeral march for Rome's innocence. Simony had begun the symphony. Poison now conducted the finale. The walls themselves seemed to sweat with the fever of conspiracy. However, the papal throne itself lay just beyond reach, and Rodrigo's eyes burned toward it. What if the election of the Pope reeked of betrayal? In August 1492, over 20 cardinals were locked behind the gates of the Apostolic Palace, sealed away as if to trap both truth and treachery. Rodrigo Borgia had amassed some 40,000 ducats in bribes, their metallic weight heavier than any papal decree. Wine chalices were laced with arsenic beneath velvet linings, the faint floral scent of poison masking its lethal promise. This set in motion a conclave where devotion bowed to duplicity. The hush of conspiratorial chants echoed off frescoed vaults, notes vibrating like the heartbeat of a wounded city. Cardinals exchanged wary glances, each man's breath tasting the acrid anticipation of murder. A gilded box of poison lay hidden within a carved walnut chest, its latch slick with secrecy. Meanwhile, courtiers whispered that even the most solemn oaths could be bought and broken. Rodrigo's purple silk cassock fluttered in the candlelight as he approached the voting stall. Each step he took felt like crossing a battlefield strewn with unseen corpses. As a result, few dared oppose his ascent, fearing a chalice at their lips. He signed the revocation of anti-simony edicts, moments after his coronation, sealing his transgressions in ink and intimidation. The scent of melting wax mingled with the smoky tang of betrayal in St. Peter's Basilica. Outside, muleteers paused to watch banners bearing the Borgia bull slip through cobblestone streets. The faithful kneeled, unaware that their prayers drifted through corridors steeped in sin. Rodrigo placed the papal tiara on his brow, its gold gleaming like a beacon in a storm. However, the weight of the crown felt as cold and heavy as his own ambition. The faithful in St. Peter's Square raised their voices in hymn, but their songs rang hollow against the shadow of deceit. Simony's stains spread through the church like acid on vellum, eating at its fragile reputation. Guards draped in red and gold stood sentinel, their armor catching torchlight in sharp flashes. Each guard's breath fogged the night air, carrying the chill of unspoken dread. Rodrigo's first decree as Alexander VI was delivered on trembling lips, promising indulgences to the highest bidder. A papal bull unfurled like a dark flower, its edges scorched by candle flame. Meanwhile, rumors spread that even the keys of St. Peter were for sale, traded for secret coin. City bells tolled a dirge as news of the new pope's methods drifted through Roman alleys. The scent of fresh olive oil from nearby markets seemed incongruous against the stench of moral decay. His supporters cheered with fervour, unaware they were chanting in the shadow of foul play. Each cheer felt like a chorus in a macabre play. In private chambers, Rodrigo toasted his victory with vintage Burgundy, its sweetness betraying its poison-laced duplicity. Candlelight flickered across his satisfied smile, revealing the glint of ruthless intent. This election, they said, had redefined holy office as the ultimate prize in a deadly game. The papal ring he slipped onto his finger gleamed like a severed halo in low light. However, his coronation was only the prelude to greater profanities. Sculpted marble saints in St. Peter's seemed to weep marble tears at his ascension. Courtiers in velvet doublets bowed under the weight of his mandate, their shadows elongated and uneasy. The metallic clink of coins in velvet purses became a haunting refrain in the capital. He had transformed Rome's heart into a capital of commerce, where faith was ledgered and sold. Even the pigeons in St. Peter's Square paused mid-flight, as if unsettled by the unholy trade. And as Alexander VI surveyed his domain, the city held its breath under the shroud of his blasphemy. He reshaped sacred art to crown himself alongside Christ. Between 1493 and 1494, Pope Alexander VI summoned Pinturicchio to fresco the Borgia apartments with a vision of divine propaganda. The damp scent of wet plaster mingled with sharp pigment oils as artists toiled under hushed supervision. Cesare's face appeared in Liberation of St. Peter, his stigmata-like marks so subtle that only devout eyes noted them. This set in motion a wave of speculation about where worship ended and propaganda began. Gilded cherubim bore the charging Borgia bull in their halos, its bronze sheen gleaming under torchlight. In those very moments, frescoed walls pulsed with unnatural life, colours so vivid they seemed to breathe. Worshippers knelt beneath archways where family crests replaced saints' symbols. In the wake of these revelations, Rome's faithful found themselves doubting whether their prayers honoured God or fueled Borgia ambition. Pinturicchio's brushes etched angelic hands crowning Alexander VI in scenes of fabricated martyrdom. The aroma of burning tallow candles wafted through corridors lined with painted guises of holiness. Each stroke of gold leaf felt like a gilded lie, layered atop truth. Pope and painter conspired in silent chambers, their whispers echoing like borrowed prayers. This caused noble patrons to commission similar art, hoping to mirror Borgia prestige. Frescoes depicted Cesare as a Christ figure, arms outstretched, wounds hinted on his palms. The blood-red robes of painted apostles contrasted with Cesare's immaculate garb. Marble floors reflected candle flames that flickered in time with scandalous gossip. Meanwhile, medals struck in 1494 bore Alexander VI's likeness, angels' hands lifting his tiara. The cold metal felt heavy in the hand, imprinting sacred blasphemy on every surface. Courtiers exchanged these tokens like mercenary saints, their faith weighed in ducats. The metallic clang of mint hammers resounded through papal mints at dawn. Under these circumstances, objects of devotion transformed into emblems of Borgia family worship. Even the fresco of Conversion of St. Paul bore a hidden B for Borgia in its swirling light. The chapel's vaulted ceiling dripped with frescoed halos, each painted glow a testament to Borgia vanity. Scented oils used to maintain the paintings mingled with the acrid tang of political betrayal. Pilgrims paused to pray before these works, unsure if they worshipped Christ or court intrigue. This blurred the line between piety and propaganda. Patrons in velvet doublets whispered that only the Borgias earned God's true favour. Tapestries commissioned soon echoed the same theme, silk threads depicting family portraits in sacred scenes. All the while, choirboys' voices rose in hymn beneath vaults adorned with the painted lineage of the Borgias. The echo of their clearest notes seemed at odds with the hidden screams in the imagery above. Each brushstroke, critics said, was a sermon in disguise. This led to clandestine gatherings where scholars debated sacrilege beneath closed doors. The scent of old vellum in the Vatican library hinted at heretical texts smuggled for reference. Portraits of Alexander VI hung beside martyrdom scenes, his gaze as serene as any saint's. But those who inspected the halos noticed an unsettling symmetry with his papal crest. As a result, believers hesitated to cross themselves under those painted lights. The cold stone benches rang hollow when pilgrims discovered the subtle conspiracies in every fresco. However, Marian devotion was merely the next canvas awaiting Borgia hands. Could the Mother of God be repainted as a Borgia tool? In 1496, Alexander VI commissioned Giovanni of Naples to weave a tapestry portraying Lucrezia as the Immaculate Conception, its silken threads shimmering under torchlight. She stood cloaked in lilies and moonlight, her porcelain face as still as devotion itself. This led to grand processions through Rome's narrow streets, the faithful kneeling before woven iconography. The scent of incense drifted over cobblestones, mingling with the sweet perfume of fresh lilies. In those same chambers, silver reliquaries at Santa Maria dell'Anima gleamed with the inscription, Our Lady, Our Lady, Our Borgia. Each line of Latin gilded in gold leaf felt like a contract between faith and family. In the aftermath of those displays, worshippers found their prayers entwining Marian doctrine with overt dynastic praise. Silk banners depicting Lucrezia's crowned head fluttered above arches, their tassels dancing like pious spectres. The hush of candlelit chapels trembled under the weight of political spectacle. Guards in polished cuirasses marched alongside veiled nuns in a procession that reeked of theatrics. This spectacle masked uneasy murmurs about devotions bought with ducats. The Feast of the Borgia Virgin, funded with 500 ducats annually, replaced ancient Marian celebrations. However, traditional hymns faltered when new verses praised Lucrezia by name. Tapestries dripped with silver threads that caught midday sun like tears on a saint's cheek. Priests distributed small medallions bearing her effigy, each a sacramental souvenir. This caused theologians to fret that piety was being auctioned to the highest bidder. Meanwhile, candle smoke curled around her painted likeness in the Sistine Chapel side halls. Pilgrims bowed before the tapestry as if it held the keys to celestial grace. The chill of marble floors contrasted with the warmth of devotional fervor. Rumors circulated that Lucrezia's attire was woven from silk donated by Venetian merchants seeking favor. Her image, bathed in torchlight, shone like a manufactured miracle. Before long, local artisans raced to capture her likeness in both wood and stone. Carpenters chiseled her face into pews. Goldsmiths embossed her name on chalices. The metallic rasp of hammers in distant workshops echoed like profane psalms. However, beneath the veneer of sanctity, darker whispers persisted. Courtiers speculated that her elevation was less about holiness than about Borgia legacy. This led to secret debates in monasteries where scholars compared Marian doctrine to propaganda. Musty volumes of Apocrypha emerged from vaults, their pages stained with candle soot and controversy. Outside the sacred precincts, market stalls offered embroidered brooches, showing Lucrezia crowned and the Borgia bulls entwined. Devotees wore them like scapulars, their faith suspended between goddess and dynasty. The smell of fresh bread from nearby bakeries mingled oddly with the metallic tang of devotion. Over time, the lines between sacred mother and papal daughter grew ever more obscure. Priests found themselves hesitant to preach without subtly invoking Borgia blessings. This set in motion a dependence where faith and familial favoritism coalesced. Soft hymns echoed through basilicas, interlaced with sotto voce references to Our Borgia Lady. The hush of incense-laden air felt as taut as drawn cathedral chords. Yet even these orchestrated devotions carried the chill of scripted faith. However, the family's darkest theatrics lay yet ahead. What if every conquest was sold as divine mandate? In 1500, he was appointed papal gonfalonier, raising armies under God's banner that clashed steel in dawn mist on fortress walls. By 1502, he had seized Forlì and Imola, and rumour held that he murdered Alfonso of Aragon at a feast to clear his path to power. This led to villages scorched in God's service, with acrid smoke curling over burned fields and terrified peasants huddling in shattered cottages. As a result, Cesare's name became synonymous with saint and scourge, his campaigns praised as divine mandates even as they reeked of sacrilege. He issued papal bulls promising indulgences to any soldier who spilled heretic blood, turning murder into a sacrament. The metallic taste of fear mingled with the tang of sweat on battlefields where banners bore the papal keys into slaughter. But Cesare's charade of piety was an armor for his true ambition, power unchallenged and territories amassed. Impaled standards fluttered like grotesque prayer flags over captured towns, mocking the sanctity they professed to uphold. Meanwhile, courtiers whispered that Cesare consulted mercenary captains by candlelight, their voices hushed against frescoed walls. This led to alliances secured with gold-laden coffers, as men of fortune traded loyalty for ducats under flickering lamps. His campaign wagons rattled over dusty roads, carrying priests turned generals and relics rebranded as war trophies. However, the scent of incense in Vatican chapels contrasted sharply with the fetid odour of rotting corpses left behind. Cesare's commissars tallied souls and spoils alike, indifferent to the lives erased by his ambition. He rode with iron gauntlet gripping the reins, his steed's hooves thrumming a mechanical drumbeat against the earth. This set in motion a legacy of terror that even his sister, Lucrezia, could not temper with her fabricated purity. Soldiers wore papal insignia on blood-stained armour, believing salvation awaited them beyond battlefield carnage. Yet beneath the veneer of holy sanction lay whispered tales of bargaining with assailants, as daggers found pockets lined with sharp promises. The clang of armor in morning mist became a symphony of dread for villagers who recognized those papal banners. But Cesare laughed off such rumors, his voice echoing through marble halls with cold confidence. He claimed divine providence guided his sword, even as his troops looted churches for gold to fund further conquest. Frescoes in nearby chapels bore new chips and blood spatters, relics desecrated by hasty crusading piety. Meanwhile, letters dispatched to the Vatican extolled his victories as miracles, ensuring more bulls would follow. The parchment crackled under candle smoke as scribes embellished battle reports with angelic intervention. This led the Curia to endorse his charters, bolstering Cesare's authority with inked seals and solemn oaths. His strategic brilliance masked the brutality. His victories read like scripture penned with blood. In the chill of dawn, he surveyed conquered ramparts like a general of heaven's army, though hell raged behind him. However, whispers among the faithful spoke of cursed crusades and miracles that bore the stench of guile. Children recalled the thunder of artillery that shook their dreams, turning prayers into pleas for mercy. Cesare's campaign tents smelled of sweat and holiness in precarious balance, a juxtaposition no creed could reconcile. He commanded troops at Montefeltro's gates with clenched jaw and unwavering eye as banners clashed against stone walls. This set in motion the brutal annexation of once independent communes, their autonomy erased with papal mandates. Rewards for captains arrived in gilded chests, their laughter mingling with the screaming of the defeated. But Cesare remained silent in victory feasts, the coppery tang of spiced wine failing to mask his grim intent. He toasted to futures forged in blood, to a kingdom carved from alliances of fear. Meanwhile, the echoes of church bells drifted across fields stained with fresh graves, a mournful dirge for corrupted crusades. Pilgrims passed these villages in horror, their footsteps muffled on cobblestones marked by betrayal. Cesare's godless campaigns reshaped Romagna like a sculptor working with bone instead of clay. As a result, the church's moral authority lay fractured, its sacred mission overshadowed by the clangor of Cesare's war drums. And thus, the spectre of holy war became inseparable from the name Borgia, forever entwining piety with atrocity. What if a duchess embodied innocence amid scandal? In June 1501, her marriage to Giovanni Sforza was celebrated with a mass at Santa Maria del Popolo, silk gowns rustling like hushes over marble altars. Yet whispers claimed Sforza was later banished and died in exile under suspicious circumstances. This led to rumors of poison delivered in bridal goblets, with the coppery tang of deceit lingering in those hallowed halls. As a result, Lucrezia's visage of purity became stained by whispers of murder and intrigue. In 1502, the papal court murmured of an incestuous liaison between Lucrezia and her brother Cesare, excused in private as a divine unity. The candlelight danced off her gentle features and shadowed the venom beneath her smiles. But every courtier who bowed before her felt the chill of unspoken sins in the vaulted corridors. Her second marriage to Alfonso of Aragon concluded with his untimely death, rumoured to be the work of a subtle poison. Silk banners that once proclaimed her betrothal now bore the faint scent of belladonna in their fibres. This led to a fleet of letters sealed in crimson wax, pleading for answers from Ferrara's wary court. Meanwhile, portraits depicted her draped in lilies, arms folded like the Madonna, while gossip seethed beneath the paint. The soft glow of torchlight in her chambers could not conceal the tension in her silken sheets. As a result, Lucrezia became both icon and enigma, her reputation crafted by Borgia propaganda and shattered by rumour. Poets composed sonnets praising her chastity, unaware of the dark verses that trailed in their wake. The scent of roses in the gardens at Ferrara clashed with the metallic hint of fear in her attendant's whispers. But Lucrezia moved through court like a porcelain doll, her expressions frozen to perfection. Courtiers traded gossip like coins, their secrets exchanged under frescoed ceilings in the Vatican. This set in motion a delicate dance of alliances, as families vied to court her favor despite the shadows she carried. Yet for all her cultivated grace, her eyes betrayed the weight of her father's ambitions. In midnight audiences, emissaries spoke of her as a conduit to papal power, not simply a noble bride. The soft brush of embroidered sleeves against cold marble served as a constant reminder of her gilded cage. Meanwhile, clandestine envoys delivered parcels wrapped in velvet, rumored to contain poisons or love letters, depending on the recipient. This led rival houses to fortify their kitchens and vet every goblet at courtly feasts. Despite this, Lucrezia's public persona remained untarnished in official chronicles, her scandals relegated to footnotes. The clink of fine china during her tea rituals contrasted sharply with the clinking of shackles on her hapless husbands. But her smiles at processions, where silver reliquaries bore her image alongside the virgins, felt rehearsed. As a result, her devotion was questioned by nuns who observed her from convent walls, seeing both saint and sinner in her gaze. Her alabaster skin gleamed under candlelight, masking the bruises of betrayal hidden beneath sumptuous gowns. This set in motion whispers that her purity was but another Borgia tool, wielded to sanctify their blasphemy. In secret chambers, priests whispered confessions of nobles who feared her silent power more than any sword. The rustle of prayer books in the oratory of Loreto contrasted with the rustle of silk that accompanied her arrival, both echoing with unspoken hushes. Meanwhile, her name became a lure for ambitious courtiers seeking favor with Rome's most infamous family. This led to lavish gifts delivered in leather satchels, pearls rumored to be dredged from poisoned springs. Yet Lucrezia's voice remained soft, her words measured, betraying none of the chaos around her. The gentle clatter of her fan in private chambers could stop conversation like a tolling bell. As a result, some whispered that she wielded influence more potent than any papal bull. But even as rumors of incest and murder swirled, her portrait by Pinturicchio cast her in hallowed light. The painter's brush laid down strokes of saintly serenity that belied the tempest in her reputation. And so, Lucrezia's tainted purity became a paradox, a saint forged in scandal, a sister enshrined in sin. Their family portraits dared to rival Christ's own image. In 1502, Pinturicchio frescoed the Borgia apartments, weaving Cesare into the liberation of St. Peter with stigmata-like marks on his palms. The wet plaster released the sharp scent of fresh pigments as angels sprawled in halos over family crests. This led worshippers to pause in awe, uncertain whether they stood before divine vision or calculated propaganda. As a result, Rome's sacred art transformed into a shrine for flesh and blood popes, blurring the boundary between worship and homage. The frescoed arches glowed with blues and golds shimmering beneath vaulted ceilings, yet a chill lingered in the bone-white glow. But the stigmata on Cesare's painted palms cut through illusion like carved steel. In 1503, Giovanni of Naples produced a tapestry depicting Lucrezia crowned in lilies, arms folded like Madonna in serene defiance. The silk threads caught candlelight, each petal shimmering with both devotion and artifice. Meanwhile, bronze medallions struck by Matteo dal Nassaro bore Alexander VI's crest alongside his portrait in papal tiara. The cold bronze halos glinted with false sanctity, like twin moons in a tarnished sky. This set in motion a wave of sacrilegious fascination that spread through the Vatican's marble halls. Courtiers lined up to kiss medallions as if relics, their reverence tinged with unease. The metallic clink of medals echoed off frescoed vaults, sounding more like coins than consecration. However, critics whispered that the Borgias worshipped themselves, not God. Candles flickered over manuscripts where prayers and family genealogies intertwined, like vines choking a vine. The parchment crackled under inquisitive fingers, revealing illuminations that showcased papal lineage as holy mandate. As a result, clergy questioned whether to kneel before Christ or the painted visage of Cesare. Roses and incense mingled in processions, the fragrant haze masking the undercurrent of blasphemy. But the faithful felt a discordant drumbeat beneath their prayers, as if a false metronome kept time. The murals loomed over narrow corridors, their scale dwarfing worshippers who passed beneath painted saints and popes alike. In private chapels, confessions blurred faith and politics, penitents pleading for mercy from both saint and sinner. This led to a subtle shift in devotion, as parishioners offered alms to family coffers more eagerly than church plate. The rough-hewn stone benches wore the imprints of devout knees and unspoken doubts. Meanwhile, inscriptions carved into marble invoked both Christ's name and the bull of Alexander VI. The stench of wax mixed with the sweet iron of blood on priests' fingertips, a paradox of sacred violence. A fresco showing Cesare as a shepherd guiding lost souls felt like a twisted parable scripted in pigment. This set in motion speculation that salvation itself had become another Borgia tool. Stained glass windows caught the afternoon sun, casting coloured shards across family portraits like fractured truth. However, the artist's signatures lay hidden in cherubim, a silent testament to Borgia patronage. Court gossip claimed Pinturicchio received gold ducats in crimson sacks, his brushstrokes bought and paid for. As a result, art historians debated whether the frescoes were masterpieces or monuments to hubris. The chill of candlelight against cold stone reminded onlookers that even holiness could be purchased. But pilgrims continued to flock, drawn by the promise of witnessing the Pope's living legacy. Manuscripts bound in white vellum depicted Bible passages alongside papal genealogy in equal measure. Meanwhile, silver reliquaries bore images of Lucrezia's Madonna-like form, their surfaces polished to a mirrored lie. The air in the Borgia apartments hummed with hushed awe, the ghosts of saints mingling with whispered fears. This set in motion a lasting scandal. Rome's art became inseparable from the name Borgia. The Church's sacred mission faltered beneath the weight of painted sanctity and gilded deception. As a result, the Iconography of Depravity stood as the family's final masterpiece, an eternal warning etched in pigment and metal. On the 18th of August, 1503, Rodrigo Borgia collapsed in the Vatican, his final breath mingling with the tolling of distant bells. Rumours spread that his courtiers had turned poisoned chalice against him after years of his own deceptions. This led Pope Pius III to ascend and immediately annul dozens of Borgia indulgences, stripping away their purchased salvation. As a result, Europe's faith in the papacy trembled, the once unassailable image of Alexander VI laid bare. The empty papal throne in the apostolic palace stood silent, its frescoed walls echoing with hollow triumph. But the archives revealed simony, incest, and murder inked in archival tomes, their pages stained with scandal. Courtiers rifled through musty parchments, the crinkle of vellum sounding like whispers of betrayal. Arrest warrants circulated for key Borgia retainers suspected in high crimes, their names scrawled in red wax. Meanwhile, the rusted clank of cell doors echoed as loyalists found themselves imprisoned under new decrees. This set in motion a purge of every Borgia edict, their bulls shredded like fallen relics of false faith. The scent of burned parchment drifted through Vatican corridors, a bitter smoke of reckoning. However, Some relics survived hidden in secret vaults, awaiting rediscovery and further outrage. In St. Peter's Square, crowds murmured as the Swiss Guard lowered Borgia banners alongside coffins. The granite columns seemed to shiver in the chill autumn air, as if repulsed by the family's legacy. This led to hastily convened councils debating the legality of past decrees and the fate of tainted benefices. The midnight oil burned in cardinals' studies, their quills racing to rewrite history in sober ink. But torchlight glare revealed more than just new statutes. It illuminated faces drained of confidence. Pilgrims who once sought Borgia absolution now paused in doubt before confessionals, their voices hushed. The soft rustle of penitential robes contrasted with the harsh scrape of scriptoriums reclaiming power. As a result, the church reeled from self-inflicted wounds, its moral authority fractured like stained glass. Whispers of divine punishment drifted through chapels, mingling with incense that now smelled of regret. However, beyond Rome's walls, Borgia allies schemed to reclaim lost influence through bribery and threat. Messengers rode through misty dawns, their mounts' hooves drumming a warlike tattoo on cobblestones. This set in motion a second wave of intrigue as European courts weighed alliances with the disgraced line. Yet the Vatican's shadows grew longer, the threat of Borgia resurgence haunting every cloister. Monks peered from cloistered corridors, their eyes reflecting both fear and fascination with the fallen pope. The echo of distant choirs sang hymns of penance, their harmony broken by rumors of hidden treasures. As a result, treasure hunters scoured Roman catacombs, seeking Borgia coffers filled with illicit gains. The cold damp of underground tombs clung to their skins, a tangible reminder of earthly sins buried beneath sainthood. Meanwhile, the new pontiff issued bulls, reaffirming church doctrine, striving to heal wounds that still bled. Candlelight flickered in St. Peter's Basilica, illuminating mosaic floors now cleared of Borgia crests. This led the faithful to believe that renewal was possible, even as history's scars remained. However, the memory of painted stigmata and poisoned goblets refused to fade from collective conscience. Courtiers traded stories of Alexander VI's extravagance as cautionary tales over wine in shadowed taverns. The cobblestones of Rome seemed etched with their footsteps, each crack a testament to blasphemy. As a result, the church embarked on reforms that echoed through later centuries, driven by fear of relapse. But within hidden corners, Borgia loyalists plotted quiet revenge, their voices as cold as marble saints. The chill of Vatican corridors lingered long after the purge, as if the stones themselves held grudges. And thus, the collapse of the cardinal pope became a turning point, the moment Rome confronted its own darkest ambition. Could the Pope's own bloodline escape unscathed? In November 1503, Cesare fled Romagna as his armies dissolved like autumn leaves in a bitter wind. He sought refuge in Naples, but was trapped in damp dungeon cells that echoed with the clang of irons. This led to his January 1504 imprisonment under King Frederick's decree, his ambitions crumbling like ancient frescoes. As a result, the once mighty general found himself reduced to a prisoner in a cell where torchlight flickered against cold stone. Guards stomped boot heels on flagstones in rhythmic mockery of his former triumphs. Meanwhile, Lucrezia crossed the Adriatic under heavy guard to marry Alfonso d'Este, stepping from papal gold into the twilight courts of Ferrara. Her carriage wheels clattered over cobblestones, each jolt echoing the scandal she could not escape. However, Cesare's final chapter unfolded at Vienna on the 12th of March, 1507, where betrayal met him on the battlefield. He died with sabres singing around him, the clash of steel, a requiem for his unyielding ambition. The acrid sting of gunpowder smoke mingled with the metallic tang of his blood on rain-soaked earth. This led chroniclers to immortalize his end as a tragic footnote in Machiavelli's Rising Prince. In Ferrara, Lucrezia's life pivoted again when, on the 24th of June, 1519, she fell ill amid courtly blooms. Servants found her pale form draped on satin cushions, her breath shallow in dawn's first light. As a result, rumours swirled that she'd been poisoned to silence what dark secrets she carried. Candle flames danced on walls lined with portraits that still bore her painted serenity. But the gardens at Ferrara bore witness to her grief. Rose petals scattered like tears on dewy grass. The scent of jasmine clung to her gowns, a cruel contrast to the whispers beneath her windows. This led nobles to wonder whether her gentle smile had masked a mind as sharp as a dagger's point. Meanwhile, pamphlets circulated in Venice recounting incestuous tales that clung to her name like ivy. The rustle of paper in clandestine meetings carried accusations that stained the Catholic ethos. However, some courtiers insisted she remained a pawn, her fate written in papal scripts she could not control. Cesare's legacy haunted Ferrara's corridors, his ghost riding the arches of every frescoed gallery. The chill of castle stones in winter nights reminded those who passed that power and peril were inseparable. This led to frequent midnight vigils, as conspirators plotted revenge or redemption beneath vaulted ceilings. Servants lit torches that cast monstrous shadows on walls, like demons dancing to silent music. As a result, the Este Court became a theatre of fear, each guest a potential player in unfolding tragedy. But even in death, Cesare's name carried weight. Dukes and princes quoted his tactics with grudging respect. Lucrezia's mausoleum at Ferrara Cathedral became a pilgrimage site for both mourners and malcontents. The echo of chanting monks in stone aisles blended with silent prayers for her soul's absolution. However, the petals from her coffin's rose wreath were claimed as macabre keepsakes by the devout and the damned alike. The cold marble of her tomb bore her likeness carved in alabaster, her eyes closed in eternal repose. This set in motion a legend that she and her brother had sealed their union with blood and betrayal. Manuscripts bound in red leather recounted their story as a dark fairy tale for disillusioned believers. But artful poets composed elegies that cast Lucrezia's innocence into stark relief against her family's infamy. Their verses fluttered through courtly gatherings like haunted melodies, refusing to be silenced. Meanwhile, travellers spoke of Ferrara as a city where beauty and scandal walked hand in hand. The rusted gates of the Borgia palace stood as thresholds between reverence and dread. As a result, the Pope's own bloodline could not escape the shadows they'd cast across Christendom. And so, exile, murder, and scandal became the final chapter of a dynasty that had dared to wield God's name as a weapon. Chronicles after 1532 recast Cesare as the archetype of ruthless ambition in Machiavelli's The Prince. The smell of old parchment-filled candlelit studies where scholars argued his legacy like dueling swords. As a result, his tactics became cautionary doctrine whispered in aristocratic salons. Baroque painters in the late 16th century revisited Borgia iconography, weaving bulls and cherubim into allegorical canvases. The glimmer of gold leaf on sacred robes shimmered like gilded scars beneath gallery spotlights. However, conservatives recoiled at halos inscribed with papal crests beside cherubic faces. The rustle of canvas in empty halls sounded like secrets slipping through cracks in frescoed vaults. In 17th century pamphlets, lurid tales of incest and poisoning sold in cracked leather bundles at street corners. The clack of the printing press punctuated each scandalous headline like a judge's gavel. This led to pamphleteers claiming even divine mercy would shun the Borgia bloodline. Meanwhile, travellers whispered in taverns that Borgia ghosts haunted Roman back alleys. The chill of evening mist carried echoes of hurried footsteps and stifled screams. As a result, tour guides later pointed to abandoned palaces as sites of restless spirits. Scholars pored over tattered letters, their quills pausing at passages stained with wine and suspicion. The acrid scent of ink mingled with the musk of secrets long buried in vaults. But even skeptics found their curiosity piqued by rumors of hidden treasure beneath cracked tiles. Silver reliquaries and bronze medals surfaced in 18th century auctions, each etched with a Borgia bull. This led collectors to pay fortunes for items that once funded poison plots. In dusty libraries, dog-eared elegies and epitaphs recounted Lucrezia's tragic allure. A lone candle flickered on a reading desk, casting her marble likeness in flickering relief. As a result, poets composed elegies that mingled sorrow with fascination for Borgia grandeur. However, those same verses warned of ambition's seductive venom. Street actors in 19th century Rome staged dark comedies of poisoned goblets and broken vows. The clatter of wooden swords and actors' ragged breaths filled cobblestone squares at twilight. This led audiences to murmur that art had blurred too closely with real blood. Meanwhile, novels portrayed Lucrezia as both saint and siren, a duality that enthralled readers. The turning of pages echoed like distant thunder in hushed drawing rooms. As a result, her name became synonymous with dangerous beauty across Europe. Art historians peered at fresco fragments, noting where bulls' horns intruded upon sacred halos. The click of magnifying lenses revealed brushstrokes that celebrated Borgia lineage in hidden corners. But for every academic treatise, a scandal sheet lurked on street carts, hawking sensational myths. The aroma of street food mingled with the tang of gossip drifting down Roman boulevards. This led to Borgia legends morphing into public myth, as mutable as wax under candle flame. Travellers departing Rome often bore amulets meant to ward off Borgia curses, twisted metal that coldly pressed against palm. Their faint jingle sounded like a prayer against unseen horrors. As a result, the Borgias infamy seeped into Italian folklore, stitched into lullabies and cautionary tales. However, beyond folklore, their story endured in lecture halls and popular memory alike. The rusted gates of their former palaces still loomed, like silent judges, over cobblestone courtyards. And thus, the rumours that outlived their makers became an eternal echo of power's darkest depths. And so, as the last torchlight flickers out in vaulted chapels, and the hush of marble corridors settles like soft dust, let the weight of ancient whispers ease from your mind. Feel the cool hush of night air brushing your skin, and the gentle rhythm of history's breath lull you toward tranquility. Allow the silent echo of papal keys and cloistered chants to fade into restful calm. If tonight's journey through power and piety stirred your curiosity, tap subscribe and ring the bell, so these quiet tales of the past can find you again in peaceful slumber. Good night, and may the stillness of centuries cradle your dreams.